Sup, cock fucking face niggas. It's your boy Ace, man. I'm in fucking Sacramento right now and shit. Mom just moved. I have nothing better to do out here, so I'm just gonna freestyle for you dick sucking motherfuckers, alright? Ready? You ready? Nah, I'm playing. What beat?
Hey, but I ain't get to see him today. And if I wanna go outside, I gotta make sure that I can play it. I bet you never seen a pig fly. I bet you never seen a pig fly. I bet you never seen a pig fly. But you ain't really looking through my eyes, bitch.
And that's fine. Tyler makes music for himself. He even says that on the first track of this album. But I guess that means he doesn't make music for me. So if you don't like this album, then I guess he didn't make it for you.
Tyler, the Creator, is undoubtedly one of the most polarizing figures in all of hip-hop, and therefore has an equally polarizing fan base. All of Tyler's albums can be divided into two distinct groups: the dark, edgier era, encompassing these three beauties, and the soft, more playful era, encompassing these two beauties. Where's Cherry Bomb? Cherry Bomb is kind of like the midpoint in Tyler's mixed discography, the start of a crossroad between the two sounds of Tyler. And for that reason, it tends to be in a bit of a limbo, having both the harder sound of the past to the softer sound of the present. Tyler's early discography seems to be an era in which Tyler seems to disavow now, saying that the stuff in Bastard and Goblin tend to embarrass him nowadays, and not really represent his present views and styles. And for that reason, I want to focus on Tyler's earlier creations, more specifically Goblin, an album released in 2011, which was, and still is, Tyler's most misunderstood musical creation released. We can all look at an album like Cherry Bomb and see the criticism it received when it was first released to the public. However, it is now revered as a beautiful album with many tracks that his fans now love and adore. But Goblin stands alone as Tyler's dark horse in his career, only appreciated by a select few people. The purpose of this video is to explain to you why I think Tyler the Creator's Goblin is not only one of the greatest albums Tyler's ever released, but one of the greatest musical masterpieces of all time.
So everybody say hi to the goddamn camera.
What is the sound of Goblin? Well, Goblin seems to employ the musical genres of alternative hip-hop, hardcore hip-hop, and horrorcore, despite what Tyler has previously stated. There are a total of 18 tracks if you include the 3 extra tracks from the deluxe edition. This album has production from former Odd Future member and former Mellow Hype member Left Brain, and of course, Tyler. Each song has this odd sonically produced sound, which creates a tone of sadness, anger, and violence, which is of course due to the fact that in the early 2010s, Odd Future was extremely fucked up, but in a good way. This may seem more common nowadays, at least kind of, but before now, there was never someone who matched Tyler's sound. Tracks like Fish and She had these hard vocals mixed in with an R&B sound of his featured artists in their respective tracks. The instrumental tracks of AU 79 and Untitled 63 have this built-up nature with a repetitive sound, which you would think would ruin the song but actually helped the album slide smoothly, being a well-done intermission in the hardcore sound of the album. The lyrics of all the songs contain these horror movie themes of rape, murder, and drugs, which are both scary and unnerving but also kind of funny in a dark, edgy way. However, in order to truly understand Goblin, we must first explore the landscape it was born into. It's 2010. The bling era of rap is on its last legs, and pop is now standing tall as the last popular genre finally taking over the industry. Artists like Adele, Rihanna, and Taylor Swift are on the rise to the top of the charts. If you were looking at rap then, you'd probably think it would be under limbo for a while before it would rise to its feet again. But no one expected that rap was about to be more alive than ever before. At that point, rap was about to manifest itself into a completely new sound. All because of one man. Aubrey Drake Graham. Going under the rap persona of Drake, Drake was a relatively new artist who sparked a lot of potential due to his acting career in the show Degrassi, and getting assigned to Cash Money Records in the year of 2009. 2010, the year after Drake's signing, saw the release of one of the most important albums of the 2010s. Thank Me Later, the first debut album released by Drake, sent shockwaves around the rap world, which encouraged a change for many artists, offering opportunities to new up-and-coming artists influenced by the sound of the new artists on the rise. Something that I like to call the R&B Reformation. While R&B is definitely not a new thing, I mean, hell, it's been around since the 50s, I would definitely say that before Drake came around, it was in a bit of a battle with the bling music of the 2000s. And thanks to the rise of Drake, the genre reformed and flourished high into the spotlight. In the midst of this musical renaissance, a relatively underground and unknown artist going by the alias Tyler the Creator released his 2009 first debut mixtape, Bastard. A little over a year after his collaborative mixtape, The Odd Future Tapes, with his friends. And I don't mean this odd future, I mean this one. The release of Bastard was met with mixed results, having people either hate the themes and aggressivity of the tape, or enjoy the breath of fresh air, having a euphoric feeling listening to the strange yet quality music and beats. The songs in Bastard range from these voice samples, like in the track Odd Toddlers, to the dark piano of the title track, to the heavy and deep synths like on the track Pigs Fly, and the closing track Inglorious. Regardless of your feelings, it's safe to say that this mixtape was very different and unique compared to everything else out there, with this tape giving the young Tyler a moderate following of people in appreciation of the medium. And just 2 years later, we would see the release of Tyler's first debut album, Goblin. I'm not yet a man, still not overboard. It's my only choice, that's parading gold. Who influenced Goblin? What influenced Goblin? Well, that's a good question that seems to be a bit difficult to answer. Of course, it seems pretty notable who influenced his later work, but early on it wasn't a very explicit, available piece of information. Let's look at the aesthetic of Goblin, the themes behind it all. A troubled teen trying to find his identity. A common thing that young adults feel, trying to find out who they really are and what their purpose in life is. And this is what makes Goblin have this rebellious fuck everything feel. It seems somewhat evident to me that the sound that Tyler uses in this album takes inspiration from Pusha T and Waka Flocka, with the bumpy, heavy sounds they used in their early work. The rebellious attitudes of Pusha and Waka weren't a one in a million thing back in the day though, and so Tyler wanted to be distinct from the rest. The needle in the haystack. He took inspiration from the dark, rebellious attitudes of the early artists of the 2000s, and made them into his own, taking it to the extreme. Some artists rap about ditching school, while Tyler raps about killing the students and teachers. Some artists rap about hating their father so much they never want to see him, while Tyler raps about hating his father so much that he wants to kill him. The aesthetic also seems to take inspiration from the Italian band of the same name, with a satanic style to them. His lyricism and wordplay also seem to take inspiration from the themes of horror movies, taking the descriptive nature of them and implementing them into his songs.
Every song is a story to me.
Eminem was also a big influence on the style and wordplay of Goblin, both using the outrage produced from their offensive styles to their advantage.
As long as I like it, that's all that matters.
In terms of the storyline of Tyler's albums, Goblin falls last. Chronologically, the story goes like this: Bastard, Wolf, and Goblin. It's very highly contested on how the story goes. Some say it's Wolf first and then Bastard, but I personally think that the story makes the most sense as Bastard first and then Wolf. I mainly want to focus on Goblin though, so I'm just going to give you the basics of the other two. Alright, here it goes. So Bastard opens up with Tyler introducing himself to the audience, but more importantly, Dr. TC. The best way I can describe this mixtape in terms of the story is just one giant therapy session as a result of Tyler's teacher sending him there. The therapy sessions are filled with topics like Tyler's father, to his previous relationships, and his troubled outlook on life. There are characters like Ace the Creator introduced in this mixtape. However, he isn't really relevant to the story. The only thing you need to know about him is that he's the aggressive alter ego of Tyler. Next up in the storyline comes the 2013 album, Wolf. This album takes place directly after the events of Bastard, with Tyler's therapist, Dr. TC, taking Tyler to a place called Camp Flogna as a way to get Tyler to have actual interaction with people, still seeing the good in Tyler and wanting to set him on the right track. A form of therapy, I guess you could say. This album introduces the next two alter egos of Tyler, Sam and Wolf. Wolf being the ideal version of Tyler. The person that Tyler wants to be, while Sam is just a major cunt. The self-proclaimed cowboy of his gang and the whole camp. This album introduces the love interest of this album, and probably the most crucial character in the album, Salem, on the track Cowboy. The album switches between the main characters in this album, Sam taking some songs in the album and Wolf taking the others. Hostilities start to gradually build between the two throughout the album, with it finally coming to a peak due to the events on the track Party Isn't Over, in which Wolf flirts with Salem while Sam is out selling drugs. The rivalry between the two builds more and more after this, with Sam seeing that he seems to be losing the battle against Wolf, having both his girl and his reputation tarnished ever since Wolf arrived. The tracks Parking Lot and Rusty are basically giant threats to each other, with both Wolf and Sam's respective groups basically bragging about how they'll kick each other's asses if they ever get in their way. Now Rusty is very important in terms of knowing the order of the storyline because in the end of the track, Sam kills Earl, and that's why we don't see any appearances of Earl in Goblin, because Sam killed him. You may say it's because of the whole Samoa thing, but I personally disagree. Trash buying is the big battle between the two gangs with gunshots and threats going everywhere, creating a collage of insanity. Skipping the next few tracks, we come to the final track, Lone, utilizing the beautiful clarinet sampled instrumental to create this sad and subtly violent track, having Wolf mourn over the death of his grandmother, and at the very end give a very sly threat to Sam, saying that he'd kill him if he ever see him again. Finally getting frustrated after another direct threat of murder, and seeing that his method of therapy isn't working, leads us to the events of Goblin, which I feel is the most interesting and important album in the entire trilogy. The album starts with the title track, Goblin, which opens with Dr. TC telling Wolf/Tyler that he's too much of a bitch to actually go through with the threats he's dished out in his previous songs. This album is basically multiple personality disorder manifested into music. Yonkers is basically a lyrical contradiction, having Tyler and Wolf fight for dominance of who is in charge. By the point of Goblin, Wolf is no longer this troubled teen who's just misguided, but a deranged lunatic who's losing his mind more and more throughout the album. Radicals is a track with Wolf, or I guess Wolf Haley now, saying that he fucking hates school, presumably due to the fact that it's very restricted to his hard personality. She and Transylvania are both tracks about Wolf's love for Salem, one much darker than the other. Moving past the track Nightmare, we are introduced to the new character, Troncat, the sadistic character who finds joy in the infliction of pain on others. It's basically insinuated in the song that Troncat has been the one negatively influencing Wolf/Tyler this whole time, and making him fall deeper into insanity. Her is another Salem track, having Tyler reminisce about his time talking and flirting with Salem, presumably while in Camp Flogna, getting really close to her while simultaneously blowing off Sam, only to get back with him by the end of the track. Sandwiches is the only real appearance of what seems to be Sam on the album, with the themes of this song relating to the track Pigs where he basically explains his gripes with school. The track Fish alludes to a serial killer going by the name of Albert Fish, having dark, demented lyrics like, "Slip it in her drink and in the blink of an eye I can make a white girl look chink." Analog, one of my favorite tracks, seems to be a bit of a flashback into the old Flogna environment, presumably taking place within the Party Isn't Over track due to the lyrics talking about meeting by the lake. Bitch Suck Dick is a funny villa track with Taco and Jasper. The important thing to note is that Tyler kills his friends at the very end from an outside influence. Window is the climax of the entire story, having Tyler reach his breaking point from all the events of this entire storyline, seeming to finally weigh on him heavily. Dr. TC brings in all of Tyler's friends in, as a final attempt to try and get him and bring him back to reality. By the end of the track, Tyler murders all of his friends, no longer in control of his feelings and emotions. All except for Dr. TC, who comforts Tyler after the egregious murder of his friends. AU-79 is an instrumental intermission, presumably being Tyler stuck in his thoughts, reflecting on everything he's done. AU is the symbol for gold, being the 79th element in the periodic table, which is a perfect setup for the final track, Golden. Golden is a full mental breakdown, having Tyler spastically spew and reveal all of his final gripes with life, and his existence to Dr. TC. Dr. TC sees this and deems Tyler as a lost cause, calling security to detain Tyler for further examination. By the very end of the track, we get an ending dialogue from Dr. TC, finally revealing the truth of who he really represents in the story. A year after this album was released, we received the final track of the storyline, Sam is Dead, having Tyler finally break free from all of his alter egos, shooting them all with a rifle. Mharlo, you're a big fan of Tyler the Creator, I'm assuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple questions for you regarding not only Goblin, but also Tyler as a whole, as an artist.
Gotcha.
So my first question for you is, how were you first introduced to Tyler?
My first introduction to Tyler was by you, Devil, suggesting that I should give him a listen. I had heard a couple tracks from Tyler beforehand, but I never tried to listen past the famous singles that he had. However, that changed last year.
And what was the first single you heard?
The first single that I've heard was See You Again on Flower Boy.
What was your favorite album Tyler has released as of now, and why?
My personal favorite Tyler album probably would be Wolf. That album marks the maturing point for Tyler, but also encompasses the most important part of the plotline for the Wolf trilogy. Tyler expresses his depressing moments and ideas on Wolf, from the loss of his grandmother, his father being absent from his childhood, and the struggles of a relationship. Wolf marks the point in Tyler's discography where he begins to incorporate more music theory and maturity within his songs, to which most of them are enjoyable. The lyrics on Wolf are less controversial compared to his previous works, but aren't entirely absent, yet still invigorate meaningful ideas. I also enjoy the overall aesthetic of Wolf, that being the center of Camp Flogna, where Tyler explores deeper into his mind regarding his problems and concerns. Personal favorites of mine on that album would be Jamba, Dama 23, Answer, Slater, Party Isn't Over, Campfire, Beamer, I Fucking Hate You, Rusty, and Tamale.
What was your first initial impression of Goblin when you first heard it?
After I heard Wolf and the subsequent albums that followed, I was surprised that Tyler created a new era of himself each time. The difference between Wolf and his most recent project as of 2020, Igor, is massive, but the gap between Goblin and Igor is even greater. Goblin presented to me the more brash and offensive side of Tyler's past within his Odd Future days. His mindset of fuck society is more present than ever on that album, where Tyler has no problem with spilling his thoughts and ideas on paper and creating songs out of it, no matter how vulgar it may be. My first impression of Goblin was, like most other people, a slight confusion as well as the effects of shock value. However, over time, I was able to appreciate Goblin for what it's worth and how important it is to Tyler's discography.
Would you say that Goblin is, in a way, too abrasive for you, or is it just right?
For me personally, probably just a little bit on the more abrasive side, but I know there are fans that would probably like the album for what it's worth. Yeah.
So what would you say, continuing on the topic of Goblin, were the pros and cons of Goblin as a whole?
As with any album, there's pros and cons. For one, Goblin provides an uncensored reflection of Tyler's past and provides an overview of who Tyler was to strengthen how much he's grown as an artist. The brutal honesty that comes with Goblin shows the confidence Tyler always had as an artist, one who always trusted his ideas, and he stuck to him, despite the vulgarity. I think another pro that comes with Goblin is the originality. The rap community of 2011 already had seen what Tyler had to offer on Bastard, but Goblin provided a much darker side of him within the lyrics and thoughts that took the community by storm. Goblin also has some major downsides as well. For one, the album isn't for everyone. This album isn't one that you would possibly, play on the speakers unless everyone didn't give a fuck about every single offensive lyric that the album has. Goblin, in my opinion, is one of the most offensive albums I've ever heard. The difficulty of getting into the album may not be a con to some. A handful of the lyrics still seem distasteful and could have been better off the album. Another con of Goblin may be the simple beats, in my opinion, Tyler used on the album, many of which get repetitive after a couple listens, but overall, I'd say Goblin is like maybe a 6 or a 7.
As a fan of Tyler the Creator, what would you say is the biggest draw to him?
Being a Tyler the Creator fan, I think the biggest draw to him is the fact that he trusts his ideas and sticks with them. Even if things may not end up the way that he wants them to, he does what he can to improve upon them, and time again, he's improved himself as an artist. This connects back to why I think Goblin is an important piece to Tyler's discography, because although the brash and offensive style of the album may drive some away, it reflects how he composed a record based on his own ideas and is seen in each album that succeeds it. The fact that Tyler has been able to grow as an artist to achieve his goals is what makes him one of my favorite rappers, and his success shows. He's gotten mostly positive reviews from critics on most of his albums. His golf wang clothing line is fucking popular. He's made his name known in the rap community and his recent Grammy Award. Tyler's originality stems from his confidence in trusting himself with what he believes to be the best music he can make, and that's why I support him.
Last question. What do you think is next?
I'm not too sure. All the snippets and stuff that he's posted on Instagram, I don't know where he's going to be leading his music into, but if Flower Boy and Igor are really good, then I'm going to assume that the next album's good too, so we'll just have to wait and see.
This album changed, like, my whole everything.
It's pretty clear that the genres and themes of Flower Boy and Igor have influenced music and art today. Main reasons being because 1, they're new, and 2, they are much more accessible to the average listener. Goblin, however, is obviously much less accessible to the average audience, for obvious reasons. So who has been influenced by Goblin? Well, aside from Billie Eilish, I would say that Goblin has inspired an entire generation of artists. Let me tell you why. Look at a rapper like X. Look at rappers like Suicide Boys. Look at rappers like In City Morgue. What do all of those rappers have in common? Their heavy abrasivity and their dark offensive lyrics. They all implement levels of violence, which create this horrorcore feel to them. I wouldn't say they're horrorcore rappers though, because that's a really small bubble to put them in. They are all rappers of many talents and genres. But just look at Goblin, and then look at a piece like Hell or High Water. Look at Goblin, and then look at a piece like Revenge. Whether directly or indirectly, Tyler has paved the way for a subculture of edgy, hard rap, all created by troubled teens, just like how he once was. When Earl, Haji, and Dama were still prevalent members in Odd Future, the aesthetic and style of their music was undoubtedly linked. Even a group like Brockhampton drew inspiration from what Tyler had done in his early career. And now, more than ever, the ideas that Goblin represented are not at all welcome in the society we live in today. The average listener doesn't go out of their way to listen to the edgy trap lyrics of Look at Me. They don't want to listen to the dark suicidal themes of Hive and Burgundy. Why are teens shunned from this? From living out their lives how they want to? From expressing themselves in even the darkest ways possible?
Everybody thinks about dark shit. Why when somebody finally fucking says it, it's such a big deal?
And look at where Tyler has come now. He's grown out of it, found his own way through taking his own path that he wanted to. And now, he's doing better than he ever has. And so are many artists that have been down that same path. Music like that in Goblin is therapeutic, the first of many stepping stones to sail your way to success and happiness in life. Nothing today truly captures what Goblin represents. No album I have ever listened to did I really relate to the hidden themes in it. They want us to go to their schools and be fucking miserable at their fucking college, studying that bullshit. Fuck that. Do what the fuck makes you happy. Cause at the end, who's there? You. Goblin is not horrorcore. Goblin is not music. It is a work of art that breaks the mold of what is socially acceptable in society. Many people listen to modern Tyler and don't even bother to dive into his roots. The things that he had to battle through to get to where he is now. It depresses me that people won't even give this type of music a chance, just because they don't bother to listen past all the dark subject matter. And that is why I feel that Goblin is, and always will be, a misunderstood musical masterpiece.